So just want to highlight, first of all, my email address, sean.jacobs@noaa.gov. If you need to get a hold of me, go ahead and send out an email. Otherwise, my cell phone is provided below, 308-539-0615. Go ahead and plug that into your cell phones. If you need immediate assistance and it's serious, do not hesitate to reach out to my cell phone, or if it's during the normal working hours, feel free to call me at any time. You probably are aware, but due to the COVID situation going on, we have been forced as a federal agency to go and have as few people working in the office at any one time. So many of us are teleworking, and I've been teleworking for some time. Also, there's the telephone number 308-532-0921. That is our main office telephone number. So you can reach a forecaster 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, direct line back to our forecasters. So if you have any questions and you cannot reach me or you need immediate assistance, that is your go-to number. But with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So first of all, I just wanted to briefly review some of the services that we can provide to you as emergency managers. I'm sure you're all aware of our situation reports. Just so you know, those situation reports, the name is going to change to weather report. And the reason for that is situation reports in the ICS field have a specific meaning. What we're providing is a weather report. So don't get caught off guard if you start hearing that we're going to send out a weather report. It's basically what our situation reports are. I also want to highlight our decision support forecasts. And these two forecasts here outlined in red, these were just some forecasts that we sent out last year. First and foremost, Lake McConaughy. Don't know if you were aware, but we were providing forecasts for the Nebraska Game and Parks, as well as Keith County Emergency Management each weekend throughout the summer for Lake McConaughy. It went over very well for them. Our decision support forecasts basically highlight the impacts of the day or of the weekend for you. So if we're expecting any storms, heat issues, whatever, this is all available to you for really anything. We also provided a decision support forecast this year for COVID-19 for testing centers for Lincoln County as well as Custer County and a few other counties. So if you have anything going on and you as the emergency manager decide that it is important enough to receive a specialized forecast, I know you all have had training on how to request these, but if you need to, just reach out to me and I will be happy to put these forecasts in for you, and we'll get that information to you out through via email daily if that's what you need. Also, with these decision support forecasts, there is the ability where we can alert you as emergency managers in the event that, say, a thunderstorm is going to impact an event. Maybe you have a rodeo going on in your county, and you want a buffer or a radius of 20 miles around that rodeo, where if any lightning starts to approach it, you want a phone call or to be alerted. We can do that. One other thing that we can do is we can provide basic Spanish-speaking decision support forecasts. Now, I know we don't have a huge Spanish-speaking population out here in West Central Nebraska, but we did do a little of that for Lake McConaughy during their busy weekends, like the 4th of July or Memorial Day weekend, and it went over really, really well. Once again, we want to make sure that everyone is safe. So we're happy to tailor whatever message we can for your needs. And if you would like these decision support forecasts and don't remember how to request them from us, I'm happy to give one-on-one training, or I can always put them in there for you. And then also, we do provide on-site decision support services where, let's say you have a big gathering of folks and you want a meteorologist paired up with you at an EOC where that they can provide you real-time weather data for that event. What comes to mind is our Nebraska Land Days concerts that I work with, with the Lincoln County EMs. We can provide on-site DSS so that we're there watching the radar and we're there talking to you directly rather than through forecasts. So if you have any questions about these, just wanted to review our services that we can provide, just reach out to me. I am your liaison to the National Weather Service here in North Platte. Now, I also wanted to touch on something new that you're going to be hearing about. It's the watch to warning gap. Now, our science operations officer, John Stepcotti, some of you who may know, he's been working on a team throughout the National Weather Service to basically bridge the gap between when we start issuing watches and when there's warnings. So I'm going to pick on Ron Leal. He's the western part of our forecast area, Garden County. You know, a watch comes out, and let's say he lives in County A, or his area of responsibility is County A, so Garden County. Well, 30 minutes later, they start getting their warnings. Well, that's great for Ron because the time between we put out the watch to the warning was a short amount of time. Well, let's say we have Custer County or we have Holt County on the other side of our forecast area. And maybe that watch goes for 6 hours and that convection doesn't make it to them, for 3 to 4 hours after it started. They're sitting there thinking, okay, well, what's going on? Has anything changed? So we're going to try to bridge that gap and get you our expertise as soon as we know it. And we're going to do that through various methods. We've tried this in the past, but we're really making a push this year. And I want you guys to be aware. We're going to be providing more forecast discussion meso updates. So the mesoscale, more that medium or that smaller scale updates regularly during severe convective weather. We also will be using NWS chat to chat out our thoughts more than we have in the past or what we're expecting. So if you're no longer using NWS chat, I know we've had issues with it in the past. I would strongly encourage you to once again get your account active. We do have a special EM chat that is just for the emergency managers where we can get you that information, and we chat where it gives you that opportunity to ask us direct questions as well. Of course, you can always pick up the phone too. We're also going to be being a little more active on our social media. And with that, we're going to try a couple new things this year. We're going to be doing some live streams during some of our biggest events, maybe a social media, Facebook live stream. What I'm real excited about is having an open webinar like this, where we may have a meteorologist such as myself, who's just available, say, for an hour to answer any questions that you may have after the watch was issued. So, again, more information will come out about this here in the next couple weeks, but we're real excited about it. The bottom line is we want to get you the information as soon as we know it, and we want to increase communication amongst ourselves. So the communication cannot be one-way method. It can't be just us feeding information. It also requires you all to be providing us information. So we hope that you will take the opportunity if we offer these and give us feedback and participate and let us know if it's helpful. So before we get into the spotter talk, I really wanted to touch base on what we're expecting during our spring fire season. We did brief this out to the Nebraska Emergency Management Association, and I just wanted to kind of touch base with you all. We are having some concerns that prior to green up this year, that we could see an active fire weather season. So here within the next month and a half, we're expecting the increase of large fire activity to increase, okay? Bottom line, we had a very warm and dry fall into early winter. And I'm talking through January. Once we got into February, we did get some moisture and temperatures were very, very cold. But the latest signal is suggesting that this La Nina pattern that we're in is going to slowly transition to neutral forecast or possibly an El Nino forecast going into the summer. It's a very weak signal that we're seeing, but what that would suggest to us is that we're looking at warmer than normal conditions through much of the pre-green up season. So basically months of March and the months of April before we really get those fuels to start greening up. And even though that it looks like it's going to be warmer than normal for a lot of areas, now I have highlighted March through May with the equal chances, But over March and into early April, it does, if you look to average it out, does look warmer than normal. And it also looks to be drier than normal. And that's just a bad recipe for wildfires for our area. We get what's known as a ridge breakdown before a system comes through, and that's typically when we see all of our large fire occurrence. So we're going to be very proactive in the next month and a half out of our office, issuing situation reports as well as one pagers to you all, just to highlight you when we think conditions would warrant possibly red flag conditions or would be close to red flag conditions. Perfect example is far southwest Nebraska today. We sent out a notice that we're looking at very dry, warm conditions with some wind. There was some questions on whether the fuels were just there or not, ready to burn. So we didn't go with a red flag warning, but we wanted you all to be aware. Just taking that a little bit further, precipitation in the last 30 days, you can see where the blues and the purples and the greens are. That's pretty much normal precipitation. So it doesn't look bad, but I do want to caution you that this is the driest time of the year. So percentage of normal, just because we had some pretty good precipitation in the month of February here with that cold snap, it really wasn't that much moisture. It was more than normal, but it really wasn't that much. And with as dry as we were in the fall months and early winter months, and with the drought that was expanding, we really anticipate to go back to drought conditions. I mean, we're still in drought, but we really expect it to persist through much of the season here, which does not bode well for large fire activity. Temperature anomaly, recently it's been normal, pretty near normal, even maybe slightly below normal. But if you average it out through fall, through January, really, it was well above normal. We just had that major cold snap that's kind of averaged things out. So, bottom line, it's been warm and dry. And also a little concerning is if you look at Wyoming upstream, and this bodes is just as well for Colorado, snowpack in the mountains is minimal. It's pretty low. So the runoff shouldn't be all that much. Depends on if it comes down all at one time, but there's just not much upstream moisture, for us. So all in all, we're looking at the potential for a lot of fire activity this spring. So before we get into the spotter talk, I do want to just point out the reason why we have Sam on the call today is he's a GIS whiz in our office, and we love having him. He did some analysis for us on where we had our local storm reports from last year, and there was a spotter. So what I just want to show you is that there are areas in our forecast area where we have very good coverage of spotters, and we get good LSRs. Mainly that is Custer County and Lincoln County. Elsewhere, not really cold spots. We're getting some good reports, but there are some cold spots in areas like Sheridan County and Cherry County where we're getting very few reports. And you'll say, well, Sean, that's because there's very few people there. We get it. But if you look at the bottom map, that's our spotter locations that we currently have. And you can see that there are areas across my forecast area where we're severely underrepresented with spotters. So I'm charging you as EMs. We have our spotter talks that are virtual this year. If you know people in those areas, encourage them to become spotters. Reach out to your volunteer fire departments and say, hey, let's get people in some of these areas where we do not have many spotters. Let's help the Weather Service out because in turn, they will help us do our job. So with that, I am going to end this slideshow and we'll go ahead and start the spotter talk. If you do have to take off, I totally understand. Just catch one of these spotter talks when you can. But if not, hopefully you all can stay on and you'll enjoy this. So this is the 2020 Storm Spotter and Safety Training course. And again, if you will, just make sure you reach out to us. Let us know that you stayed on for this. And that way we can get you your certification. You need a certification basically once every 3 years. So here's the agenda. It should take us about an hour to go through. We're going to, as always, give you a brief introduction about us. We'll talk about last year, go over the basics of thunderstorms, talk about the different modes and hazards. We're going to look at thunderstorm features and ways to identify them, how and what to report, awareness and safety, and resources. So about us, we are just one of 122 offices across the United States. There is 6 forecast offices that serve the state of Nebraska. We do have the largest share of the state of Nebraska, though, North Platte, but we have some of the fewest number of people. And again, that's because of our rural setting. Looking at our neighbors, here's first of all the 26 counties that we serve. Up to our north is the forecast office in Rapid City. To our west, the Cheyenne forecast office. To our far southwest is Boulder. To our south, Goodland, Hastings, Omaha, and Sioux Falls. Do want to point out that Sioux Falls does have 2 counties, Dakota and Dixon County, in far northeastern Nebraska that they serve. But just know that if you have a bordering forecast office to where you live, make sure that you get to know those individuals as well, especially if they're in the direction from where the weather's coming from. We see a lot of storms come from our west or southwest or even northwest. So if you're there, Sheridan, Garden, whatever counties, Cherry County, reach out to those WFOs, those forecast offices, and make sure that you have a good rapport with them as you do with us. You know what we do. We issue public forecasts. Those forecasts are issued free of charge. We are a federal agency. We are the only individuals that issue watches and warnings for warm and cold season weather. So if you hear of a severe thunderstorm warning, that came from the National Weather Service. If you heard of a tornado watch, that came from the National Weather Service. It didn't come from any private agency, it came from us. We also produce graphics for forecast dissemination to the public on social media as well as our webpage. And all of this information is available to anyone to use and to tailor how they need. Then we also issue reports to our core partners, such as emergency managers, regarding impactful weather. And we do post that to the webpage as well so the public can see it. Basically, we're here to serve, and we want as many people to be weather aware as possible. And we want to get that weather information is out to as many people as possible. We want to be the trusted weather source for those individuals, and that's why we work with you all and ask your help to get this information out. You may not have known this, but we also issue aviation forecasts, especially for our terminals like North Platte Terminal, where we have general aviation planes that are coming in and out, and Valentine. We also disseminate river forecasts. We issue drought statements. Chris is an integral part of our drought team and climate team, and he helps write some of those drought statements. We calibrate and maintain surface weather observation sites. We maintain a radio detection and ranging site, which is just a fancy word for our radar. And all of this data, we also launch upper air balloons, and all this data is free to anybody. Again, we are funded by taxpayer money, so all this data is free. Here's just some of the products that we issue and some of the things that we do. So now let's go ahead and just shift gears and let's talk about the role of the spotter. So now this applies mostly to the public, not so much as the emergency managers, but we want the spotter to understand that they are 1/4 of the pie. So the satellite analysis, we went to all the people at the National Weather Service in North Platte. We all have degrees in meteorology. We all at some point had an advanced course of analyzing satellite data. So we really don't need the spotter to tell us what they're seeing, based off the satellite. Likewise, we really don't need anybody to tell us what they're seeing based off of radar. I guarantee you we are the radar experts. We go through and we have training every year. We've all gone through radar school. We all had radar in college. So we don't need individuals telling us what they see on radar, as well as we don't need people telling us what they see with the surface observations or the weather models. What we need as spotters is we need their eyes in the field. So encourage your spotters to report what they are seeing to you or to us. We rather them just come directly to us. We want them to tell us exactly what they are seeing. And this is an old slide, but I think it's a very, very good one. Why do we need spotters? Well, let's say that you live 25 miles away from the radar. With our radar up there in Thetford, at just 25 miles from the radar, our radar can scan at an elevation of 0.5 degrees. It's the lowest it can scan. So by the time at just 18 or 25 miles from the radar, by the time that radar beam makes it to the storm, the height of the storm is 1,800 feet above ground level. So basically what that says is that we cannot see anything 1,800 feet or below. Well, where are tornadoes most likely to happen? They cause the damage on the surface, and that's what we need to hear about, okay? We cannot see that at just 25 miles from the radar. We cannot see that direct tornado 25 miles, just 25 miles from the radar. If you go out 75 miles from the radar, it's a lot worse. So say the distance from the radar to, say, North Platte. At 75 miles from the radar, the lowest that we can see in a storm is 8,100 feet above ground level. Several studies have shown that at 8,100 feet, that is well below cloud bases, or well above, cloud bases that are found in tornado-producing thunderstorms. So bottom line, we cannot see the tornado. We have no clue. Now there are different radar signatures that we can look at and can infer that there's a tornado on the ground, but until we get that spotter report, we have no idea if there's a tornado or not. Spotters also provide credibility, and they also verify what we're seeing. So if I were to tell you that there's a storm, let's say in Wheeler County, and radar indicated that there is a tornado on the ground, but it's radar indicated, the first thing the public is going to do when they hear radar indicated is they're going to go themselves out and look for themselves, or they're going to call their mom, they might call their pastor. They're going to do everything that they should do, which is get into their safe location, because they want additional verification. But storm spotters, they provide that credibility. If we can say that weather spotters confirm a tornado that is on the ground, people take action. So once again, spotters enhance and add credibility to our warnings, and they provide that verification that we need. So something new for 2021 is, you probably remember that we had tags for our tornado warnings. Well, in the damage that's potentially associated with those tornadoes. Well, new for 2021, we can now do that for severe thunderstorm warnings for wind and hail. So we will start putting considerable and destructive damage threat tags for wind at 70 and 80 miles per hour, respectively. And for hail, it'll be at 1.75 inches to 2.5 inches would be considerable damage, whereas destructive would be anything above 2.75 inches and greater. You would not believe, social science has shown that just by using considerable and destructive damage threat tags, how much people actually listen and take action. And that's what we want, is we want people to take action based off of our warnings. So this is something new that you're going to be hearing in 2021. Just going to take a sip of water here real quick, and then we'll start off with a review of 2020. So Sam compiled this map for us. These are all the severe storm reports from last year. Total wind reports was 461 across the state. Hail reports, 313. And there were 35 tornado reports last year. Excuse me. With 23 tornado warnings. So you can see there was a lot of severe storm reports. We're getting good reports, but you can see areas where we're not getting that many. And I will tell you that we had a storm last year going through McPherson and Hooker County that probably produced a tornado, but we never got a report from it. So we never heard of any damage. So it probably, unless we have that, we can't. It's like finding a needle in a haystack. When it goes through the sand hills, if there's no damage, we can't classify it as a tornado. So we need spotters. And here are all the reports that we got from last year. Now, if you look at our severe storm season last year, convective season, it started off in March. The light green just means general thunderstorm outlook, that there was a chance for thunderstorms in the area, in our area. The darker green means that there was a marginal chance for severe storms, and then it goes up from there: slight, enhanced, moderate, and high. You know the SPC categorizations. But if you look, March through November of last year, we at least somewhere in our forecast area, uh, we had days, at least one day each month, well, 4 days each month, we had the chance for thunderstorms. So it was active. Looking at July and August, every single day, both months, we had the opportunity for thunderstorms. June, it was all but 3 days. So season's coming upon us quickly. The season last year did start off rather slow. March and April, we didn't have a slight risk at all. And I don't ever remember that ever happening. But it started off slow for us last year, but it sure picked up once June, July, and August, came around. So in all, we had 38 marginal risk days, 29 slight risk days, 9 enhanced risk days, and for the second year in a row, never had a moderate or a high risk day. In fact, our last high risk in our forecast area was 2012. I said this last year, I couldn't remember a year where we didn't have a moderate risk. And now this is 2 years in a row. We didn't have a moderate risk. So pretty interesting. These graphics are awesome. And it just really kind of, explains how quiet maybe last year was in terms of certain types of severe weather. The upper graphic is our severe thunderstorm watch. And you can see that we had quite a few number of severe thunderstorm watches issued in our forecast area. The big winners were Cherry Rock, Kippaha, and Perkins County, each with 17 thunderstorm watches issued last year. But if you look at the lower left graphic, those are tornado watches. I guess I didn't realize this. We did not have a single tornado watch issued last year. And to be honest with you, we had very few supercell tornadoes. They were all landspout tornadoes last year. It was a very quiet year in terms of tornadoes for our forecast area. So back to the basics. We're going to briefly talk here about thunderstorms. So making a thunderstorm, certain ingredients are needed to make a thunderstorm. You need moisture. Bottom line, the more moisture, the better. So around here, when we start seeing dew points in the 50s, we start thinking, okay, we could have some thunderstorms. 60s, we're thinking, okay, that's better. We have dew points in the 70s. That's a lot of fuel for thunderstorm development. Those tend to be our best days with severe thunderstorms. Now, thunderstorms, we need a lifting mechanism to get air lifting upwards. Now, air does rise just because of the uneven heating of the Earth's surface. You get those thermals. But you also need a source of lift to really get thunderstorms going. And that can occur from frontal boundaries, dry lines, or outflow boundaries. Basically, you need something to kick that air mass upwards. So if you think about a cold front, very cold, dense air. Well, thunderstorms like to form during the convective season along cold fronts because that warm, moist air gets forced upward over the cold, dense air. Once you raise an air parcel, it starts to lift up, it cools. If it cools sufficiently where it reaches its saturation point, you start to get a cloud. If that air continues to rise, that moisture, the saturation forms into ice crystals, which rub together. You get charge separation, and you get a thunderstorm. You start getting lightning and thunder and rain. Warm fronts, again, they work in a similar method where warm, moist air is pushed up over that frontal boundary to produce thunderstorms, as well as dry lines. And off to our west in the Rockies, we're a graphic lift, just simply air encountering a boundary or terrain like the Rockies. It has to be forced up and over. So that can also help start thunderstorms. When I used to work flash flood prediction in the city of Denver and Boulder, it was like clockwork. Every day around noon, you'd start to see those cumulus clouds building over the Rockies. And by 2 p.m., we would have a thunderstorm at least somewhere along the Front Range of the Rockies. So orographic lift does an excellent job at producing thunderstorms. Now, another ingredient you need for thunderstorms is wind shear. There's two different types of wind shear that we look at, us meteorologists, directional shear and speed shear. And they both play a role in whether or not storms will become severe or not. Now, directional shear, I want you to envision airflow at the surface, say from the southwest, meaning moving from the southwest to northeast. Now, let's say we go up 1,000 feet above our head. Maybe that air now is blowing from south to north. If you go up another, say, 1,000 feet, now it's from southwest to northeast. Maybe you go up another 10,000 feet and it's due west to east. I don't know if you can envision, but there's almost a turning mechanism, if you will, in the atmosphere, kind of helping to get things spinning. That's what's known as directional shear. Directional shear is extremely important for supercells and to get storm rotation for supercells and tornadoes. Now, speed shear is equally important. Speed shear is just simply lighter winds near the surface of the earth with increasing winds aloft. You can almost envision a paddle wheel, if you will. Speed shear helps tilt updrafts on thunderstorms, which allows the updraft to not rain on top of the downdraft. And that can promote storm longevity and in severe thunderstorms. So you need a good balance of all this, moisture lift and wind shear. When you get that right balance, that's when we get severe thunderstorms that can produce all types of severe weather. So there's three different types of thunderstorm stages. First, the developing stage. Developing stage is just simply an updraft. Basically, air is rising. And remember, as air rises, it's going to expand, it's going to cool, but it's going to continue to rise as long as it's warmer than the surrounding environment. As it rises, if it cools sufficiently enough to reach its saturation point, you start getting tiny little water droplets. And if those water droplets are above 0 degrees C or colder than 0 degrees Celsius, you start forming ice crystals. Those ice crystals then start rubbing together and you get charge separation, and then you get what's known as a mature thunderstorm. So here's just a photo of a developing stage or a towering cumulus stage. Again, it's only characterized by an updraft. No precipitation, no lightning, nothing is really going on, just an updraft. Air is rising. So I've already mentioned the mature stage. Mature stage is characterized by an updraft and a downdraft. This is when the most dangerous part of the thunderstorm stages. This is when you get your tornadoes. This is when you get the hail, the wind, lightning, thunder, heavy rainfall. It's all during the mature stage. You have an updraft and you have a downdraft in the mature stage. Next, and here, I'm sorry, here's just a photo of a nice mature thunderstorm. This one's from Custer County. And I just want to highlight real quick, and let me just get a laser pointer here. But here's your updraft region of the storm. You can always tell the updraft region of the storm. It's that rain-free base, okay? If you have a rain-free base, that is the updraft region. The downdraft is where it is raining out. This is a mature thunderstorm. Now, I've already mentioned longevity. You can see that there's speed shear in this atmosphere because this thunderstorm is tilted. If this thunderstorm was completely erect, horizontally erect or vertically erect, then the rain would be falling over the updraft and you would no longer be in the mature stage, you would be in the dissipating stage. The dissipating stage is when rain cuts off the updraft and there's no longer an updraft to the storm. So it's just rainfall, and you can still have some lightning, you can still have some hail, small hail, but typically it's in its dissipating stage. That storm is done. So the most dangerous part of the thunderstorm stages is that mature stage when you have both an updraft and a downdraft. Here's a photo of a dissipating thunderstorm, and you can kind of see these little rain curtains falling. There's probably still some rain hitting the ground, but there's no longer an updraft. So you make the call real quick. You can just do it amongst yourselves. But what stage do you think we're in? And you should all pretty much say, yes, this is the mature stage because we can see an updraft and we can see the downdraft where the rain is falling. So air is rising. You can see a well-defined updraft and the downdraft. What stage do you think we're in here? And this is just simply the developmental stage or the cumulus stage. It's when the storm is forming. All you have is an updraft right now. So this is just the basic or the genesis of a towering cumulus. So let's take a look at thunderstorm modes and hazards now. So we're going to start off with the thunderstorm modes, the least severe, and work our way up to the most severe. We're going to talk about single cell thunderstorms, multi-cell cluster thunderstorms, multi-cell squall lines, and then finally supercells. Just want to point out that storms don't always follow the rules. And you can see storms changing from one mode to the next. So just because you're getting a squall line does not mean that you won't see the possibility of a quasi supercell portion of that squall line that may produce a tornado. But usually what you get is what you see, usually. And if we can determine what thunderstorm mode, if we could determine the expected thunderstorm mode, usually we have a good idea of what we can expect ahead of time. So here's a single cell thunderstorm. Basically, it's characterized with a single updraft and a single downdraft. Usually, they're very, very short-lived. The severe threat is low because, as you can see, very vertical here, your updraft. Your updraft forms, you get the thunderstorm, rain starts to fall out, and it kills off the updraft, and that storm falls apart. It dissipates. So typically, it's not long enough to develop large hail or have much wind with it. They're fairly short-lived. Usually their lifespan is about an hour or less. So the heavy rain threat is low and a very, very low tornado threat. Single cells, severe threat, low. Here's just kind of a few different single cell thunderstorms. They're not interacting with each other. Let's just pick on one here in right here north of Loop. Or North Loop, you can see it's got an updraft, downdraft, not interacting with these other storms. It's a very short-lived thunderstorm. Now, what happens when you start to get a bunch of single cells together? You get what's known as multi-cell clusters. Now, you end up with multi-cells because there's usually more shear in the atmosphere. Maybe not as much shear that you would want for, say, a supercell thunderstorm, but usually as shear increases in the atmosphere, you get more multicellular clusters. So now we got three distinct updrafts with three distinct downdrafts. You can see the rain here, rain here, rain here. Multicellular clusters, they're kind of like children. If you get one storm, usually it's not that much to deal with. When they start getting together, clustering together, they become a real pain in the backside, okay? So your severe threat starts to increase with multicellular clusters. There's definitely a noticeable increase in your wind threat in these clusters. We can definitely get severe thunderstorm wind gusts of 58 miles per hour or greater with multicellular clusters. The hail threat increases. Now, the hail tends to not be giant, but it does cause damage, especially to crops. Multicellular clusters, that's typically when we see the dime size hail up to, say, $50 size hail. So it definitely will cause damage to crops and to cars and houses, but not the giant hail that we see sometimes around here. Now, multicellular clusters, as they start to really group together, this is where we see a noticeable increase in the heavy rain and flooding threats. You can get training, so basically one updraft and downdraft that follows the same path as the others do. So you get multiple periods of heavy rain, which can increase the flooding threat, or it could just be like a big ball of rain. They congeal into a cluster, and you can get a large area of heavy rainfall. So multicellular clusters, that's when we start getting concerned with the heavy rain and flooding threat. Now, the tornado threat does increase some, but it's still not very high in multicellular clusters. It tends to be on the low side. Here's what they tend to look like on radar. Notice how there's multiple updrafts and downdrafts, and see how they're kind of interacting. They're clustering up together. So you live here in Sheridan County, you could be hit by multiple updrafts and downdrafts, or multiple rounds of hail, heavy rain. They start becoming more of a threat. But let's talk about squall lines, my favorite type of thunderstorm mode here. Squall lines are basically clusters of thunderstorms, but rather than forming into a ball, they tend to spread out into a line. So squall lines, you have a high probability of severe wind. There's also a higher, medium to high probability of large hail. When I say large hail, typically dime size to that $50 size, though you can see larger in some squall lines. The heavy rain threat does increase slightly as well, because you tend to get the squall line with the very heavy rain, and then maybe an hour or two long period after the passage with some rain that follows. So you can get some heavy rainfall. And then you could also, the tornado threat increases. You can get some bookend vortices, basically little vortices on the bookends of the squall lines that like to spin up tornadoes, or there can get little kinks in the line that where you'll get a little inflow notch to help produce tornadoes. Typically, your squall line tornadoes are on the weaker side, usually like an EF1 or 2 or less, but they can be destructive. We don't see all that many squall line tornadoes here in Nebraska, here in west central Nebraska. But I mentioned that McPherson County, Hooker County storm at the start of the presentation. That was a squall line, and there was, at least based off on radar, there was a high probability that there was a tornado in that. So here's what a typical squall line looks like in our area. This was from back in May of 2018. We like to look at rear inflow notches where the air is forcing out ahead and you're kind of getting a bulge. That's typically where your strongest wind is. So the warning forecaster was issuing based off of wind in this area. Also, notice the squall line extends back. It actually extended all the way back into northeastern Colorado. But notice these high reflectivities. This would be an area that we would be concerned with some hail in this squall line. So the warning forecaster put out a warning for this area as well. Here's just a different point of view of the squall line. We're looking at the velocity product, which is what we use to determine wind speeds, or to help us with wind speeds. And it really highlights areas where the strongest winds would be expected in those squall lines. This is my favorite squall line of all time. Just want to highlight the date, 12/25 of 2016. This was a squall line that impacted the city of North Platte about 8 in the morning. And I'll never forget it. My daughter at the time was 3 years old. We were sitting down. She was so excited to see what Santa brought us. And we started getting rain and hail, and the wind picked up, and power went out at our place. It was because of the squall line. As the squall line progressed further east on Christmas Day, it produced a couple weak tornadoes in south central Nebraska. And they had numerous reports in northern Kansas and south central Nebraska of wind gusts of 70 to 80 miles an hour with this squall line. Now, finally, let's talk about supercell thunderstorms. Now, supercell thunderstorms, they are the highest risk for severe threat. You have a very high threat of extreme wind. When we get those 100-mile-an-hour wind gusts that we typically see, several times a year, it's out of supercells. Giant hail can accompany supercells, hail to the size of, let's say, softballs or bigger. Flooding or heavy rainfall. and your tornado threat increases as well. Now, I do want to suggest, so there's a medium tornado threat. Really, this should be lower. And I just want to point out that all the right ingredients have to come together to produce tornadoes. We see hundreds of supercells each year in our forecast area, but only about 5% actually do produce tornadoes. So really the tornado threat is low, but out of all the thunderstorm modes, it is the highest in supercells. Radar point of view of a supercell, many times they have what's known as a flying eagle appearance. They will have hook echoes. Now, this hook echo is difficult to discern. It's right here. But the flying eagle, I don't know if you notice, but there's almost like wings and some talons here. Supercells will take basically on that appearance. They will also sometimes give us clues of whether or not they're dropping huge hail. When you start seeing these three-body scatter spikes or hail spikes, basically this is the radar. This is an artifact. This is not really happening, but because of the giant hail in just next to the updraft and the downdraft region of the storm, the radar is confused and thinks that there's this artifact here that's extending out from the storm. So when we see these three-body scatter spikes, we know that there's giant hail, typically, or lots of hail in these supercells. Now I'm just going to back up real quick. The reason why you get this flying eagle appearance is the updraft in these storms are so strong that the upper level winds are being diverted around the updraft region. So here's the start of your updraft right here at the surface of the earth, and it's moving up and forcing this around, this precipitation and hail around the updraft. So I think that's pretty cool. A couple of other examples of some supercells. This has a clearly defined hook echo. This was the parent supercell was starting to die off, and here's a new one back from May 17th, 2019. The time of this warning, there was a tornado in Frontier County. That was what was currently ongoing. Another example of a supercell. Here you can see that hook echo. This, by the way, is that rain-free base of the storm. We did have a tornado warning out on this storm. I never got a report of a tornado. There's a flanking line, this little bit of stuff right here, which is maybe little clouds, cumulus clouds starting to form. But this is the area, that rain-free base, that area where we would be most concerned with tornadic development is right here. And of course, this one had the Flying Eagle signature. So after this, we'll take a short break, but let's ID some thunderstorm features. Here's a squall line. Notice the squall line, they're long and they're stretched out, okay? Basically, what happens with the squall line is this is rain-cooled air that is rushing out from the downdraft out ahead of the storm, and it's forcing that warm inflow into up and above that denser, cool, rain-cooled air. So you're getting the warm inflow in the storm, and it produces this horizontal cloud that extends sometimes for could be hundreds of miles. They look very scary. Sometimes they do rotate, but that is just what's known as a shelf cloud. Now these shelf clouds, they do slope downward toward the direction of movement. So Nathan here taking this photo knew that this squall line was moving right toward him. In a perfect world, this is what a supercell thunderstorm would look like. I want to direct your attention to the rain-free base area right next to where it's raining and hailing. This, once again, is that area where your tornado will be, okay? This is the updraft region of the storm. So this is where all that warm, moist air, that energy that this thunderstorm is feeding off of, is sucking up all that warm, moist air. Extending, so this is the mesocyclone of the storm. That is the updraft region. Sometimes you can see striations in there. You can actually see that it's rotating. Extending below the mesocyclone, you will see typically before a tornado, you'll see what's known as a wall cloud. So that is just a lowering below the mesocyclone. Now, wall clouds tend to slope or point toward the area of precipitation. So here's your rain and hail. Generally, your largest hail is falling right next to the updraft region. and then that rain and hail extends outward. I mentioned flanking lines. This is the developing cumulus along the flank of the storm. If you follow that updraft up, it will continue up to what's known as the overshooting top. If you have an overshooting top, that is a very good clue that this storm is a very strong storm. Basically, what's happening is that updraft is so strong that it's punching into the stratosphere before it settles back to produce the anvil. So when you see overshooting tops, you know you have a good storm. So rain-free base, this is the area that we need to look for thunderstorms, and it's right next, or excuse me, for tornadoes, and it's right next to that rain area, rain and hail area. Unfortunately, they always don't look like that in the real world. So here's an example. This is a supercell thunderstorm. You can kind of see that this is the rain-free base compared to at least what's in the background. It's not as hazy, so this is where the inflow to the storm is occurring. This is where the downdraft is, so where that rain and hail. So this is the area that you would want to train your eyes for that tornadic development. There's also a kind of a neat area here, what's known as the RFD, that you can kind of see. So the forward flank, the RFD is the rear flank downdraft. So as that updraft goes up, it comes down in the forward flank in the form of rain and wind, and then also as wind in the rear. So you can kind of get this little clear horseshoe back here, if you will, where there's descending air, okay? And you get a horseshoe appearance on these supercells, the backside of the supercells. Right here, wall cloud, this is possibly a wall cloud. This is where you'd want to pay attention for the potential for a tornado. Fortunately, in this picture, you can't see that there's no mesocyclone because it's obscured by clouds. My guess is the storm is starting to wrap precipitation around, so it's starting to obscure even the updraft region of the storm, which happens quite often. But you can't see it, the mesocyclone. Basically, you're too close to the storm. You can see some of the key features, but not all of them. So here's a great example of a supercell. We have a wall cloud that's forming right here. You really can't see the mesocyclone, but you can definitely see what's known as the rear flank downdraft. Here's where the precipitation is in the form of hail and heavy rain, that forward flank that I talked about. The rear flank, that horseshoe, this is where the wall cloud and the tornado would form. This was probably the previous wall cloud, but now we're developing a newer wall cloud. There's also what's known as scud clouds here. Scud clouds can be ominous, they can look scary, but they're not connected to anything. And that's what I really want to impress on you. If you see lower clouds, not necessarily a big deal, but pay attention to them. If you're noticing that those clouds are being ingested into the updraft, then that means that the storm is rooted in the boundary layer and it has a higher probability of producing a tornado than one that is not rooted in the boundary layer. So that's good information to pass along. But a lot of times it comes from the public. They see these scud clouds or these very ragged clouds, and they're not connected to the mesocyclone or to a wall cloud, but they will say that it's a tornado that dissipated. We get a lot of reports of that. So just be aware of that. So what I really want to impress on you all is that storms rarely display all identifiable features. Storm structure can vary widely between different cases, and if you know ahead of time what storm type or hazards to expect, it can help you determine what features to be looking for. This is something that we really want to try to impress on our forecasters this year, basically in that watch to warning gap, is that we really try to tell you what we're expecting in terms of storm structure and what type of storms that we're expecting, and therefore the type of weather. We're going to try to feed you more information. And always be aware of lookalikes. Here's a perfect example. Is that a funnel cloud or is that a scud cloud? You would ask yourself, is it rotating? Is it connected to the mesocyclone? Is it connected to the wall cloud? If it is rotating and it is connected, you have a funnel cloud. In this case, it was not. It's just a scud cloud. The cloud itself is right here. This was not even part of it. It looks scary, but it's nothing. So just real quick, what do you guys think? Look-alike, or is this something that you would call into us? And I'm really focusing on this feature right here. It's right next to the precipitation. Is this something you'd be concerned with or not so much? Now, hopefully you would say that that is just a rain curtain. It's associated with the rain. You can see more rain here in the background. It's not associated with that rain-free base or even a lowering. So that's just a look-alike. Always ask yourself, if you come up on something, is it rotating and is it attached to the mesocyclone or wall cloud? If it is, we want to hear about it. What about this feature right here? It looks scary, but I will tell you it's not rotating. It's very ragged and it's not even attached. So even though it's in the right area, this is just scud, okay? This is that rain-free base. You can see the rain in the background, but this is just scud. It's nothing to be concerned about at this point. But you would want to watch it. If it's being ingested into the storm, we would want to hear about it. Real quick, land spouts. We're not going to go too in-depth with land spouts. That is our topic for our advanced course, which I would really like for you all to take, if you will. That will be virtually once again, and it is being advertised on our website. But land spouts are tornadoes. They're not associated with supercells. Tend to be much weaker than supercell tornadoes. They're very difficult to detect on radar, especially at large distances from the radar. The majority of our tornadoes last year in our forecast area were land spout tornadoes, okay? They were not supercells. They form in groups, typically, whereas usually there's one land spout, you'll see several more. So here's one from 2018, Wheeler County. Just want to point out, you can see the dust being, swirled up here on the ground. Even though you cannot see the condensation funnel, you can see the little tail hanging right here. It is not associated with a supercell. Basically, this cloud that you're seeing right here looks like these tend to form during the formation stage of storms or single cell stage of the storm mode. So, but they're very, very short-lived, very difficult to detect on radar. So if you see one, we want to hear about it right away, because then we can really key in and look for others. I will tell you, within 5 minutes of this scan, 2 land spouts formed along this little boundary in each of these cells. So I think we got ours first in Wheeler County, that photo that you just saw, and then about 5 minutes later, the one here in Boone County, popped up. So it's good to know. Downbursts and microbursts, basically rain-cooled air. You get downbursts or microbursts that form because of rain-cooled air that descends rapidly from a thunderstorm and it spreads out at the surface. It's enhanced by the amount of evaporation that occurs under that thunderstorm. So on drier days, we tend to get some pretty strong downburst or microburst, subcloud layer, dry subcloud layer days. And also it depends on the amount of water droplets falling from the sky. You can envision billions of tiny little water raindrops falling from the sky. They all have a mass, and that mass drags the air down to the surface. So as those drops are falling, they're dragging air down with them, and they evaporate, which cools the air surrounding them, which speeds up that process, their downward acceleration. So this is how we can get downbursts that can cause damage similar to a tornado. It's not uncommon for us every year to at least get 3 or 4 reports where downburst winds are in excess of 80 to 100 miles an hour in our forecast area. You can tell that it's a downburst usually by the rain foot that forms. I don't know if you can notice, but right here, how it looks like a foot. That is a perfect telltale sign of a downburst or a microburst. Here's another one you can see right here. Nathan took a beautiful picture of a rain foot, downburst, microburst. When you see that, you know that the wind is going to start accelerating outward from that location in all directions, and there will be an increase in winds. And again, it can be significant. Just a short video of a wet microburst. I think it does a very good job. You can see that rain foot right there. And time lapse of it. So tell us what would you report? And I'm not going to open up the lines here, but just if you're with each other, what would you report here, and where would you be concerned? Hopefully, you would report to us that you're seeing a supercell thunderstorm. You see a wall cloud. It's debatable whether it's rotating or not. If we had video, we would know if it was rotating. But it's definitely got a wall cloud, because here's those striations that we're talking about. This is the mesocyclone. So this is the updraft region of the storm. There's a lowering from it. And you would want to train your eyes on anything that would be dropping down from this. This is where your tornado would happen. And all the rain and hail is back here in the background. What would you report here? And I'll just give you a hint. I'm not seeing any lowerings in this rain-free area. But we got these curtains of rain that are displaced. Almost looks like a rain foot. This is a microburst that's underway. So this is good information to pass along to us. This one's a little more difficult. I'll just give you a second to think about it. What do you think this one is? If you said a shelf cloud, you are correct. This is a shelf cloud. So not really concerned. We would be watching it. But these lowering here, we're not really concerned. This is spread out over many miles. We would be looking in the areas of the kinks or the bookends for the possibility of maybe a quick spin up, tornado spin up. But we'd be more concerned with the wind and hail out of this. So we're going to take a quick 5-minute break. If you will, I need you to write down this website, or simply take your cell phone and scan this QR code. Basically, you just open up your camera on your cell phone and scan it. Basically, this is how we are going to get you certified for your training. So if you do not do this, if you do not go to this website, or you do not click scan this QR code with your cell phone and fill out the Google form, you will not be certified and get credit for this training. So please do so. Let's take 5 minutes, and then we'll end up in about 20 minutes thereafter. So we'll start back up here at about 3:10. So I'm going to go ahead and get started once again. Just wanted to put my email address in the chat. I appreciate everybody who's told me what region you're with or what counties you represent. For those of you who I haven't met, welcome to the course. So thank you. Write down my email address, and if you want, send me out an email. I can get you in so that you're getting our sit reports, so that we can forward any information to you as well. So just go ahead and reach out to me, and we'll get you in our database if you're not already getting that information. So we'll go ahead and we'll finish this up within about 20 minutes. So what counts as severe? Anytime you see a tornado, we want to hear about it. Generally, anytime that there's hail that's causing damage, we want to hear about it, or anything that's bigger than a quarter. Wind in excess of 58 miles an hour, or 50 knots, 60 miles an hour, essentially, we want to hear about it. And any damage that's occurred and any flash flooding. So any of those that you see, please give us a call and have your spotters give us a call, because it's only going to help us with our warning process, with that particular storm. Just going to pause on the screen. You should all have the telephone number and the spotter number as emergency management, but if not, key those numbers into your phone now. That 308-532-0921. That number I would use, and that reaches one of our forecasters 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So the spotter line, feel free to put that one in as well.
And just, there's always somebody at the weather office.
I'm sorry, Sam, I stepped all over you on that. Would you go ahead and repeat that?
I just wanted to add that there's always somebody at the weather office 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
You betcha. And we are on Facebook and Twitter, so if you haven't already, make sure you give us a follow or a like. I'm just going to breeze through this. There are other ways to report. You can submit a storm report based off of our webpage, and just follow the options. There are third-party apps that you can use to submit reports, but I'm going to say we really want phone calls from emergency managers. The public, we don't care where it comes from, but from you all, gives us the opportunity to connect with you and to ask you all questions. We trust you all, and we know we're getting a good report from you. So if you don't mind, just give us a call. When you do call, mention that you are with emergency management, and we know you. I know you. Not all of our meteorologists have met you yet. So just say, that you're the emergency manager. Tell us exactly what you saw. Make sure you let us know of any uncertainty, and tell us where the event or the damage occurred. So, if you're standing in Mullen, but the damage was 5 miles west of town, please don't tell us, hey, I'm here in Mullen and we had trees knocked down. Then we're like, okay, there's issues there. Let us know, and it's okay to give us estimates. You can always use landmarks or highway mile markers to help us, but tell us where it is relevant to you. And estimates are great, and always report when conditions allow. We do not want you to put yourself at risk, okay? And if I know there's a lot of areas where there's poor cell coverage, so if it's 10 p.m. at night and the event is over, but you're finally back in cell coverage, if you don't mind, give us a call, because that really helps us, okay? Really, really helps us. Tornadoes, we want to know ASAP. We're going to ask you if you saw a debris cloud. Is there damage associated with it? You might not know all the answers to these, but that's okay. How long has it been on the ground? And if you have any videos or pictures, we will always use them. So, please share those with them. Tornadoes is where we really want you to express your uncertainty. So if I were to cover up this bottom half of this picture, where you couldn't see that indeed this tornado was on the ground, say, hey, I'm seeing a funnel cloud, I think extends the ground, but I cannot see the ground. Please tell us that. Do not report unless you are a tornado, unless you're 100% sure that it was a tornado. And that especially goes true for damage. Just because you see a bunch of trees down does not mean that a tornado just came through there. And it could be wind damage. So it's only going to help you and your people that you're serving if you report your uncertainty to us. We always want to hear about damage. Reporting wind is difficult. So if you see that there are broken branches or down trees, let us know if it was a healthy tree or a dead, if it was a dead tree or so. I will tell you, wind is it's pretty easy to knock down dead cottonwood trees, and you all know that. Okay. So if you notice the health of the tree, let us know. If you have a Kestrel or some sort of wind sensor, and you did measure the wind speed, let us know if it's estimated or measured, and just do your best. I always joke around, but I say the next time you're riding along as a passenger in the car, and it's at a place where you can do so, have the person driving speed up to 60 miles an hour and put your hand out the window. That's how a 60-mile-an-hour wind feels. Okay, so just do your best on estimating wind speed. This is just a quick guide that will kind of give you an estimate of wind speeds. If you're seeing whole trees in motion, you at least got a 40-mile-an-hour wind. If small branches are breaking, it's 40 to 50. If you start getting 4-inch branches breaking, you're at severe level winds, at least 60-mile-an-hour winds. When you start getting above 60-mile-an-hour winds, that's when trees start snapping or falling down. Empty pivots start flipping at 70-mile-an-hour winds, and actually it takes about a 100-mile-an-hour wind to flip a full pivot. When you report hail, I'll just make this real quick. Always relate it to common objects like sports balls or coins, or use a tape measure or a ruler, and avoid using, like marbles or your hand. Is your hand the size of Dikembe Mutombo's, hand who played basketball? Or is it the size of Shawn Johnson, who is a gymnast? We don't know that. We get every year at least 5 or 6 times people say, "Oh, it's about the size of a chew can," and it's kind of funny trying to explain to some of our newer meteorologists who have never used tobacco, how big a chew can is. They don't know. So just use common objects like coins or sports balls. Always maintain your situational awareness, have multiple lines of communication when you're out spotting for us, no escape routes, and also know where safe zones and shelters are located. And just remember, no report is worth your life. I know you all know this, but we have to stress this with the public, because the public, they want to do what's right for their community, and they push the limits. No report is worth your life. If you're getting up close and personal with the storm, we really don't want the report from you. We want you to do it from a safe location. So I spoke about situational awareness. We've used this graphic every year for the last probably 10 years, but it's such a good graphic. You're down there in Imperial and you're looking at the storm in the right place to see the storm and see if it's going to produce a tornado. And you're thinking to yourself, there's no issues, right? But then if you start looking at the bigger picture, that's just one of 6 supercells that day. And I will tell you that this one is moving at about 70 miles an hour to the east, right toward you, and will be on top of you in about 30 minutes or less. So, keep your head on a swivel. Pay attention when you're out there. Common tornado myths. I'm not going to spend much time on these. These are all myths, and just read through them as I go through. But these are all myths. And it's funny, we hear these every year, but again, not true. Although it does seem like mobile home parks do tend to attack tornadoes. I don't know what it is about that, but it's not true, but it sure seems to be true. When you're spotting at night, I'm not going to tell you whether you should or shouldn't, but just make sure you're not anywhere near the storm, okay? It's dangerous. I will tell you, when I was in college, I went out storm chasing, and we were down in the Wichita area driving in toward a storm, and we were on the backside heading right toward the updraft region storm C. It was tornado warned. All of a sudden, branches and tree limbs and leaves were falling down on our car. We did never saw the tornado, but that was not a good place for us to be in. So, you're basically waiting for the tornado either through a flash of lightning to see it, or if it hits a power line, you'll see a power flash. So we don't recommend spotting at night, but as emergency managers, I trust you all. If you are spotting at night, just do so from a safe location. Know that if you hear thunder, you're close enough to being struck. I always give this example, but I was walking one time during a thunderstorm at a football camp when I was in college, or excuse me, in high school at a college, and thunder and lightning was going on, and similar to this video, I was going to go get some dinner, and lightning hit a oak tree and shattered that oak tree about 100 yards away from me. So if you hear thunder, you're close enough to be struck. Know the difference between a watch and a warning. I love this graphic. Watch means that the ingredients are in place. A warning means the ingredients came together. Okay. The bear's cage is that area right next to the updraft region of the storm. This is where the largest hail and heaviest rain are falling. It's dangerous for two reasons. This is why you want to stay out of the bear's cage. Number one, you're going to smash your car up to bits, and we are not going to pay for a new windshield, okay? And, I don't know, maybe your county will, I don't know, but we're not going to do anything from that. Number two, you're driving through into the area where the tornado is going to be, because all of a sudden you're going to come out of that hail and you're going to be right there staring at the tornado. So if you see that the hail size is increasing, stop, turn around, go the other way. Never drive across flooded roads. You all know this. And always assume down power lines are live. Watch for projectiles and strong winds. This was not from a tornado. This was just a piece of corrugated metal that went flying and embedded itself in this pole that got knocked over. So resources, and then we'll be done. You all know where to get to your trusted weather source, so I'll just trust you that you get it from us. We always though recommend, and this is what we really want to push to our public, is make sure that they have multiple ways of getting their information. Take the Joplin tornado back in 2011. It took some individuals up to 7 different sources of information before they finally did what was right and went into their safe shelter. And this is after the fact that people, they knew that there was a very destructive, deadly tornado on the ground, but they had to talk to their friends. They had to call their mom. Some cases they called their pastor because they trusted their pastor. Is this real? They heard the sirens, they got the warnings. The TV meteorologists were saying there is a tornado and it's destroying the town. But sometimes people just need to hear from the trusted, people that they love and people that they trust. So this is why we stress also share this information. Do so on your social media if you have an account. Share our information, the trusted weather source, and because they will listen to you, people that love you will listen to you well before they'll listen to us. You all know about the WE alerts. The WE alerts are starting to expand across Nebraska, and with 5G, as soon as we start getting it, you'll be getting WE alerts in some areas here in Nebraska. Right now, I think it's only in the big cities. And maybe along Interstate 80, but just know that there are the wireless emergency alerts that will pop up on your phone in flooding situations, in snow squall and dust storm warnings, as well as tornado warnings. Hopefully you've been to our website so you know where you can get all of our information. I'll just gloss over that. Nothing has changed about our weather radio. They're all back and performing as they should. Unfortunately, in our 6-pack region and northwest part of our forecast area, we still have some, some areas where the data is just, it's not getting there. The weather radio is just not getting there, which is unfortunate. But we do have some good news on the horizon. I know a lot of private companies are starting to send up a lot of low Earth orbiting satellites, which I foresee here in the near future, we'll be able to broadcast weather radio for locations, specific, and anybody would be able to get it. So, we'll see if that technology takes hold or not. And again, we are on social media. And with that, I do want to say we do have a certification for this, but the link right now is not working, and I just need to get in the office and fix it. So check back. Go to our home webpage if you need a certificate, for your boss or for whoever. Just check back in a week, and we should have the certificate up and going. Top news of the day, it's just our spotter schedule 2021. Click on that and scroll all the way to the bottom. You'll see this orange box. You put your first name in, your last name in, and just click on basic, and it'll print out your certification for you. If for whatever reason you need one sooner, just send me an email and I'll get it to you. So with that, I am going to open up the floor, and it takes me just a second, to any questions. Otherwise, if you don't have any questions, feel free to leave. I appreciate you all coming on here today. And, we are here to serve you all. And that's what I want to impress on you all. So, if there's anything that we can do to serve you better, I am your liaison. Just let me know.